My ex pretended I was abusive to get sympathy from friends, so I released the screenshots and she lost her job. Friends and apartment overnight. I'm a 27-year-old guy, and for the longest time I thought I had found the person who was supposed to be my forever. Her name was Emily, and from the moment we met, she had this magnetic energy that pulled me in. She wasn't just beautiful in the conventional sense, though she was, but she had this way of lighting up a room. Everyone loved her. At parties, she was the one people gravitated toward. She knew exactly what to say, how to tilt her head when she laughed, how to make you feel like you were the most important person in the world. And for a while, she made me feel like that too. We met through mutual friends, and I remember the first time she looked at me and said, "You're different. You actually listen." That line hooked me because I had spent years feeling invisible, like no one really saw me. I wasn't the loudest in the room, I wasn't the funniest, but she made me believe that my quietness wasn't a flaw. It was what made me special. Within a year, we moved in together. I thought I was building a future. She had this way of convincing me that we were a team, that we were building something no one else could touch. Our apartment was small but cozy, cheap carpet, secondhand furniture, a bed that creaked every time we rolled over. But it felt like ours. I'd wake up in the mornings to the smell of her coffee brewing, the sound of her humming in the kitchen. She would come up behind me, wrap her arms around my waist and whisper, "You're all I need." And I believed her. But even in those early days, there were cracks I pretended not to see. She was addicted to attention, not just mine, but everyone's. She would spend hours curating the perfect Instagram stories, making sure people saw how happy we were. And sometimes, when she thought I wasn't listening, I'd catch a tone in her voice that wasn't soft or loving. It was sharp, calculated. Like she was rehearsing a performance for someone else. Back then, I told myself it didn't matter. That every relationship had flaws. But deep down, I already knew. I was ignoring something that would eventually destroy me. And I had no idea just how quickly those cracks would start to spread. I wish I could say those cracks stayed small, but they didn't. At first, it was little things. Emily would snap at me over nothing, like if I bought the wrong brand of almond milk or forgot to put the dishes away. She had this way of twisting her irritation into guilt, making me feel like I was the one failing her. "You don't even care enough to listen," she'd say, and my chest would tighten with shame. But it wasn't just in private. Around her friends, Emily started slipping in comments that stung more than they should have. "He's so quiet, sometimes I feel like I'm talking to a wall," she'd joke, while everyone laughed awkwardly. Or she'd roll her eyes when I disagreed with her in a group setting. I brushed it off because I thought that's what couples do, tease each other. But it didn't feel like teasing. It felt like she was carving away at my image piece by piece. Then came the stories. I overheard her one night on the phone with a friend. She was crying, her voice shaking, saying things like, "He gets so angry sometimes. I don't know what to do." My stomach dropped because I knew she wasn't talking about me. I had never raised my voice at her. But when I confronted her, she brushed it off. "You're paranoid." I was venting. "Don't be so dramatic. I wanted to believe her." I needed to believe her because the alternative, that the woman I loved was lying about me, was too heavy to accept. So I let it slide. I swallowed the unease, told myself she was just stressed, that relationships go through rough patches, but deep down, a question started to whisper louder and louder. What if she was already setting me up for something I couldn't see coming? It wasn't long before the whispers turned into outright accusations. One night I showed up at a mutual friend's birthday party, only to be met with cold stares. People I had laughed with, eaten dinner with, suddenly looked at me like I was carrying some invisible stain. Halfway through the night, one of them pulled me aside. His voice was sharp, almost disgusted. "Why are you so controlling with Emily? She deserves better than to be constantly afraid." I remember standing there, my drink in my hand, frozen. Afraid? Controlling? The words didn't even make sense. I asked what he meant, and he rattled off things Emily had apparently told them. That I yelled at her, that I wouldn't let her go out without me, that I punched walls when I was mad. I felt the room spinning because none of it was true. Not a single word. I confronted Emily later that night, my hands shaking as I asked her why she was saying these things. She burst into tears immediately, her voice breaking. "I never said that." They're twisting everything. You know how people exaggerate. She threw herself into my arms, trembling like she was the one who had been wronged. And just like that, I found myself comforting her, apologizing, even though I was the one being painted as a monster. That became a pattern. People confronting me confronting her. Her crying, swearing she never meant it like that, and me swallowing the doubt because I wanted to protect the relationship more than I wanted to protect myself. But every time, a piece of me chipped away. I started walking into rooms wondering what version of me people had been told about. And I couldn't shake the fear that maybe Emily wasn't just exaggerating. Maybe she was rewriting the story of our entire relationship, one lie at a time. The worst part was how slowly it all crept in, like water seeping under a door. At first, it was just a few friends pulling away. Then it was entire groups. Suddenly, the invites to dinners, game nights, and weekend trips stopped arriving. I would see the pictures later on social media, Emily in the center, smiling like nothing was wrong, surrounded by the very people who now avoided me. When I asked her about it, she shrugged, pretending not to notice. "They probably just don't vibe with you." "Don't take it personally," she said, sipping her coffee like she wasn't casually dismantling my entire social circle. It was a small apartment, but I'd never felt more alone in it. At night, I'd lie awake next to her, wondering if she could hear the way my heart pounded. I started replaying every conversation in my head, questioning if I had said or done something that really made me this abusive person she hinted at. That's how effective she was. She had me doubting my own reality. My family noticed the change in me first. My sister asked, "Why don't you come around anymore? You look drained." I brushed it off, but the truth was I didn't have the energy to explain. How do you tell your family that the person you love is quietly assassinating your character while sharing your bed? Sometimes I'd catch Emily watching me with this strange expression, almost like satisfaction. And then she'd soften, reach over, and kiss me like everything was normal. It was a dizzying mix of tenderness and cruelty, and I couldn't untangle which version of her was real anymore. By then, the thought had already planted itself in my head. The woman lying beside me wasn't my partner. She was my executioner. The breaking point came one evening when I walked into our apartment and found Emily surrounded by a group of her closest friends. They sat in a circle, their faces serious, like they were holding some sort of intervention. The air felt heavy, tense. Emily's eyes were red, like she had been crying for hours. One of her friends spoke first, her tone dripping with anger. "We can't just sit by while you keep hurting her." My stomach dropped. I looked at Emily, waiting for her to stop this, to tell them they were mistaken. But she just lowered her head, playing the role of the fragile, broken girlfriend. They began throwing accusations at me, saying I grabbed Emily's arm hard enough to leave marks, that I screamed at her until she hid in the bathroom, that I controlled who she texted. None of it was true, but the way they spoke, with such certainty, made me feel like I was living in some twisted alternate reality. I turned to Emily, desperate. "If you really believe I'm abusive, why are you still here? Why are you with me?" She wouldn't even look me in the eye. She just whispered, "I don't know. I love you, but I'm scared of you sometimes." That single line destroyed me. It was like she had loaded a gun, handed it to her friends, and let them fire it straight at my chest. I walked out that night, the sound of their voices echoing in my head, branding me with a label I didn't deserve. And as I sat alone in my car, hands trembling against the steering wheel, one thought kept circling in my mind. If she could make them believe it, how long before the rest of the world believed it too? After that night, everything unraveled. My phone stopped buzzing. No texts, no invites, no calls. Friends I had known for years suddenly treated me like a disease they didn't want to catch. Even when I tried reaching out, my messages were left on read or worse, ignored entirely. I was being erased, one silent rejection at a time. Work became unbearable too. My boss noticed how distracted I was. I'd sit at my desk staring at the screen, unable to focus. The weight of the lies clung to me, like a second skin I couldn't peel off. I was paranoid, convinced everyone could see the guilt that wasn't even mine. Nights were the worst. I'd lie in bed next to Emily, staring at the ceiling while she slept peacefully beside me. The irony burned. She was the one destroying me, and yet she looked like the innocent one. Meanwhile, my chest felt like it was caving in. I started drinking just to quiet the noise in my head, but even then, the shame didn't let up. I questioned everything. Every look, every silence, every sigh. Maybe I was the problem? Maybe I was broken in ways I didn't even understand. The lies had sunk so deep that I started believing them. I stopped recognizing myself in the mirror. The man staring back at me looked hollow, like a ghost of who I used to be. One night, sitting alone on the bathroom floor with the light off, I whispered out loud, "Maybe this is who I am." The words tasted like ash in my mouth, but I couldn't stop them. That was my rock bottom. The moment I realized I wasn't just losing Emily or my friends. I was losing myself. The night everything shifted started like any other. Emily had gone to bed early, her phone carelessly left charging on the nightstand. Normally I respected her privacy, but something inside me snapped. Maybe it was desperation, maybe it was survival instinct. But for the first time, I unlocked her phone. My hands shook as I scrolled through her messages. At first, it was harmless chatter, but then I found the group chat. My stomach turned as I read line after line of her bragging about me. No, not bragging, mocking. "He's too nice. He'll never fight back. They'll believe anything I say." Every word felt like a blade slicing through me. Screenshots of fake conversations she had staged, twisted versions of our arguments, exaggerated to the point of fiction. And worse, her laughing emoji sprinkled after every cruel line, her friends hyping her up like it was some sick game. The room seemed to tilt around me. I couldn't breathe. My chest burned as I realized that all the shame I'd been carrying didn't belong to me at all. It was hers. She had been manufacturing this story from the start, turning me into the villain so she could play the victim. I sat there for hours, copying everything, screenshots, timestamps, even voice notes she had sent where she admitted, "The more pathetic he looks, the more they'll rally around me." My hands were steady now, driven by a new clarity. When I finally looked at her sleeping beside me, peaceful and unbothered, something inside me hardened. The woman who once whispered, "You're all I need," was the same woman who had deliberately tried to destroy me. And for the first time in months, I felt the faint spark of power flicker back to life. The next few days were a blur, but for the first time in months, I wasn't drowning, I was plotting. Every free moment I had, I organized the evidence, screenshots in folders, conversations labeled by date, voice notes transcribed. I wasn't sloppy. I couldn't be. If I was going to expose her, it had to be airtight. But even as I worked, doubt gnawed at me. Part of me kept asking, was I about to become just as cruel as her? I'd stare at the glowing laptop screen late at night, hearing her soft breathing from the bedroom, and wonder if I was crossing a line I could never come back from. Then I'd remember the look on my friends' faces, the disgust in their voices when they called me controlling, manipulative, abusive. I remembered the nights I sat in silence, believing maybe I was the monster she said I was, and that doubt turned into fire. I wasn't doing this for revenge. I told myself that over and over. I was doing this to reclaim my life. If Emily wanted to turn me into a villain, then I'd let the truth expose her performance for what it was. I rehearsed it in my mind. The reveal. Should I go to her first? Confront her face to face? Or should I let her whole world see her lies in real time? The second option burned brighter in my chest. It felt dangerous, but it also felt right. Every time Emily looked at me those days, smiling sweetly like nothing was wrong, I had to bite my tongue. She thought she was untouchable. She thought I was broken beyond repair. But she had no idea that the very story she spun to destroy me was about to become her undoing. The night I finally pulled the trigger, my hands were steady. I opened the group chat, the same one where Emily had built her stage and played the role of the fragile, abused girlfriend, and I dropped the truth. Screenshot after screenshot, voice notes, texts where she laughed about how gullible everyone was. At first, there was silence. I could almost feel the weight of their eyes moving across the screen, scrolling, rereading. Then, the messages started pouring in. "Wait, what is this? Emily, is this real? Another friend. You bragged about lying? You laughed about us pitying you?" Emily jumped in fast, her words frantic. "He's making this up. These are fake!" You know how easy it is to edit screenshots. But I was prepared for that. I uploaded the timestamps, the screen recordings of me scrolling through her phone in real time, even the audio of her own voice saying, "The more pathetic he looks, the more they'll rally around me." The chat exploded. Her closest friend, the one who had confronted me months before, finally wrote, "Emily, you ruined your own life. Don't ever contact me again. I sat there, watching it unfold like a storm I had summoned. Emily tried to keep fighting, throwing excuses, begging, twisting words. But the tide had already turned, and she was drowning in her own lies. For once, I didn't say anything else. I just let the evidence speak for me. And as the chat fell into chaos, as message after message came in, cutting her off, I leaned back in my chair, heart pounding, not with fear this time, but with something I hadn't felt in months. Relief. The fallout was immediate. Emily's carefully built image shattered in less than 24 hours. By the next morning, she had been removed from nearly every group chat. Friends she'd known for years blocked her, unfollowed her, cut her off without a word. The silence she left behind was louder than any confrontation could have been. But it didn't stop there. One of her former friends worked at the same nonprofit Emily did, a place that prided itself on helping survivors of abuse. They saw the screenshots, the voice notes, the proof of how she fabricated stories about me for sympathy. HR got involved almost immediately. Within a week, she was out of a job. I'll never forget the text I got from a mutual friend that simply read, "She's done. Nobody believes her anymore." Part of me wanted to feel sorry for her. After all, this was the woman I once thought I'd spend my life with. But every time that guilt tried to creep in, I remembered the nights I cried alone, convinced I was a monster. I remembered the humiliation of friends confronting me with lies, the nights I drank just to silence the noise in my head. No, she had built this fate with her own hands. The final blow came when I heard she'd been evicted from her apartment. Without friends to lean on and without a paycheck, she couldn't keep up. Overnight, she went from adored victim to exposed manipulator, and yet even with everything collapsing around her, I never got a single apology. Not once did she admit what she had done. That silence told me everything I needed to know. She hadn't just lied. She believed she had the right to. Watching Emily's world collapse from a distance was surreal. For months, I had been the one isolated, abandoned, whispered about. Now she was the outcast, and people couldn't cut ties fast enough. Friends who had once defended her were suddenly apologizing to me, saying things like, "I don't know how I believed her over you." Their words were meant to heal, but honestly, they cut just as deep. Because where were those doubts when I was alone, begging for someone to believe me? I didn't celebrate her downfall. I didn't throw a party or gloat online. I just went quiet. My focus wasn't on her anymore. It was on trying to piece myself back together. I started spending more time with my sister, who had never once doubted me. She reminded me of who I was before Emily's lies consumed me. Still, the damage lingered. Even when old friends reached out, I found it hard to trust them. How could I when they had been so quick to turn their backs? It felt like standing in a house after a fire. You can rebuild, but the smell of smoke never fully goes away. From time to time, I'd hear updates about Emily, how she bounced between couches, how no one wanted to be associated with her. But I never engaged. I never reached out. She had taken enough from me, and I wasn't about to give her one more second of my life. Instead, I poured myself into moving forward. Therapy, journaling, reconnecting with people who genuinely cared. Slowly, I began to feel human again, but even as I rebuilt, one truth echoed in my mind: family, friends, love. None of it matters if it's built on lies. When I look back now, it almost feels like I lived someone else's life. There were moments I thought I'd never recover from, nights when the weight of her lies crushed every ounce of strength I had. But the truth has a way of clawing its way to the surface, and when it finally did, it saved me. I won't lie. Healing wasn't instant. I carried those scars for a long time. Even now, when I meet someone new, there's a part of me that wonders, will they twist my kindness into weakness too? But therapy taught me that trust isn't about forgetting the pain. It's about learning to spot the red flags I once ignored. What Emily did to me was cruel, calculated, and deliberate. She tried to bury me under a mountain of lies, and for a while I let myself suffocate. But when I finally fought back, not with anger, not with violence, but with the truth, it turned out to be the sharpest weapon of all. I'll never get an apology from her. I've accepted that. Some people don't see the destruction they cause because admitting it would mean facing the emptiness inside themselves. But I don't need her words anymore. I don't need her to validate my pain because I found peace in knowing this. She lost everything chasing sympathy, and I found freedom reclaiming my voice. She thought she could destroy me by painting me as a monster, but in the end, She only revealed who the real monster was. And as I closed that chapter of my life, I whispered to myself the words that have carried me ever since. She buried herself in lies. I walked away free.